Good morning, explorers. It is January 4th, part 4 of posting every day about culture and the reason, and the reasons that we go abroad. Today I am breaking down part 2 of my big idea, which is that culture shock matters. Not as much as getting out of the way of a train, but it does matter. Yesterday I talked about what people misunderstand about culture shock, starting with culture. That it is so much bigger than we think it is. Culture is everything that tells us what is normal. Today I want to talk about that second word, shock, which really annoys me because most people don't think that they've really experienced culture shock or that it has had an impact on their lives. Because of the word shock, they're thinking of a moment when their jaw's on the floor and they're just flabbergasted. You know, this can happen. But often it doesn't, and when it does, that's a moment in time. It doesn't really matter. It's a funny story. You move on with your life. What I would like us to start talking about rather than culture shock is to popularize the phrase culture fatigue. Because that happens to everyone, but usually without them even realizing it and not recognizing the effects of it. This is what matters. And culture fatigue is, I think, basically inevitable. Because if we think that culture is everything that tells us what's normal, that means there are just an uncountable number of things that are on autopilot in your brain when you are in your own cultural context. And that's very important because processing all of those things, am I in danger? Is this person being rude to me? Is this food? Every minute of every day. The reason why we have developed cultural software to put those processes on autopilot is because it requires too much mental energy to do it manually. But when you step into a different culture, you have to evaluate those things manually because you don't know what the cultural code is where you are, or you're interpreting those things by your own cultural context, which means you'll be getting very confusing and mixed messages every minute of every day. This is exhausting. You know, it is exciting because it means you are really taking in more information than you can handle at every moment of every day. And that can be exciting, but also extremely fatiguing. I think that's inevitable. If you do not experience culture fatigue, you're probably doing it wrong because you're not fully engaging with the experience. But that leads to something that some people call homesickness, others depression, even illness. I thought I was sick the first time that I was going through this. And that is something that we need to be aware of and think of. And I'm going to talk more about it. There is a full video on my channel if you want to hear more. Stay tuned for part 2, and for part 3 rather, and subscribe to follow the adventure.